So, hello, my dear students. So, week 1 to week 3 discussion will deal mainly with home office and branch accounting. And this review will be a first part in our discussion for home office and branch accounting. So, basically, this video deals mainly with accounting for agencies. So if when a company seeks to increase sales, so companies may increase their volume of sales by establishing either an agency or a branch. So they establish sales outlets in various areas or some distant areas. So they can put up either an agency or a branch. So, when a company operates a branch, no, of course, all transactions of the branch must be recorded to facilitate its reporting responsibility to the home office. Now, ano ba ang difference or what are the distinction ng sales agency in a branch? So, a difference between sales agency and a branch most often has to do with the degree of autonomy or the degree of independence ng organization ng either the sales agency or ng branch. Now, let's discuss first ng agency. No? A sales agency sometimes referred to simply as an agency. No? Usually is not autonomous. Meaning to say, walang degree of independence, but acts on behalf of the home office. No? So normally, the home office sends samples to the agencies. So the agency may display and demonstrate sample merchandise, and then um, it takes orders or it obtains orders from the customers. Then the agencies sends to the home office the order obtained from the customers, and then the home office fills the agency's orders. No? It's because uh, a sales agency usually does not stock inventory, meaning to say, um, those merchandise that were shipped from the home office to the agencies are intended for display purposes lang or samples, no? Parang ang samples kasi gina-treat nila as advertising expense, no? So, merchandise selection, advertising, granting of credit, collection and accounts, and other aspects of operating the business usually are conducted by the home office. So, parang si agency, so walang separate business entity or walang separate accounting entity. So, ang nangyayari, all the transactions of the agencies are still recorded by the home office. No? But the home office has an option to separate the records of the agencies or hindi na. But but normally, for decision-making purposes, kina-separate ni home office lahat ng transactions ng agencies. So, to determine if the agency is operating at a profit or operating at a loss. Yun siya. So, by contrast, si branch office naman usually has more autonomy and provides a greater range of services than a sales agency does. So, although the degree differs with the individual company. So, as what I've said kanina, no, si sales agencies um, um, do not feel customers' orders. So, si branch naman, no, a branch typically stocks merchandise, makes sales to customers, unlike sa agency that those merchandise sent by the home office to the agencies are for display purposes. They do not stock merchandise to fill customers' orders. So, si branch makes sales to customers. passes on customer credit, collects receivables, incur expenses, and perform other functions normally associated with the operations of a separate business enterprise. Meaning to say, C branch has a separate business entity and it has a separate accounting entity. So, nangyayari, si branch records all its transactions. No? So, it records all its transactions and it prepares also its own set of financial statements. So, ang nangyayari, at the end of the reporting period, the the financial statements of the branch as well as the financial statements of the home office is gina-consolidate. So, at the end of the reporting period. But we'll discuss more of the accounting for branches and in the succeeding videos. Okay, so from an accounting standpoint, the sales agency accounts are carried in the books of the home office. So, as what I've said kanina, the home office may or has an option to separate the records of the agency or hindi na. So, transactions are recorded in accounts that identify the particular sales agency. So, if the home office wanted to separate transactions, yung entry lang niya is um, my agency. So, for example, sales, then slash agency, rent expense, then agency. So, for some type of transactions, the entries recorded with the home office are based on source documents generated by the agency. So let's have some examples no on how to record transactions uh, by the agencies no. So how to record transactions from the home office yung transactions ni agency. So as an example, home office accounting for sales agency, assume that ABC Enterprise, a manufacturer of modular structures and partition based in Addis Ababa, establishes a sales agency at Ambo. So sa Ambo yung agency. So the journal entries to record typical sales agency transactions for the month of March on the home office books are shown. So later, kita natin. Note that the entries are recorded in the same way as if the home office had engaged in the transaction, except that assets, revenues, and expenses are specifically designated as relating to Ambo agency. So, as what I've said kanina, um, um, to separate the transaction, so the revenue and expense account and some asset accounts um, has to separate na, i-separate ng home office. Need to say, lagyan ng agency. So, to start with, let's have on March 1, no, transaction yung March 1. So, receipt of petty cash fund from the home office. So, normally, the home office establish a working fund or a petty cash fund to the agencies. And normally, um, the Impress system is often adopted no, just for the control of the cash. So, Impress system yung ginagamit or yung gina-adopt. So, the entry for that is, of course, you debit petty cash then para ma-separate yung petty cash fund na ka-agency siya. So, you debit petty cash fund, then AMBO agency. No? Kasi Ambo, 'di ba yung agency is located in Ambo. So, yun siya. So, debit petty cash agency, credit ka ng cash. Okay, so, uh, yung sales natin, so field sales, order from sales agency. So, typical entry for for the recording sales on account. So, you debit accounts receivable, credit sales agency. So, then you don't debit accounts receivable then agency kasi hindi mo naman yan siya receivable agency, receivable mo sa customer. So, entry mo lang is debit accounts receivable, then credit, sales, then ambo agency. To separate the sales, no? Para ma-separate mo yung sales ng agency. So next transaction is collection by home office on agency sales or collection natin ng account. So the normal entry, no? So your typical entry for collection account is your debit cash, credit accounts, receivable. On other transactions naman, no? The home office pays bills received by the home uh, pay bills received by the home office for expenses of AMBO agency. So, you debit, ano, the nature of the expense, anong expense yon? So, debit salaries expense, AMBO agency, debit office supplies, no? So, office supplies, AMBO agency. So, this office supplies is still an asset, no? I-adjust mo lang siya at the end of the reporting period. Then, credit ka, of course, ng cash. Okay? So, for March 31, no, um, the Home Office replenished sales agency's petty cash fund. So, since di ba, we're adopting Impress system. So, pag Impress system, di ba, um, when you incur expenses, walang entry, no? Walang entry yan siya. Pag-incur ng expenses. But mag-recognize ka lang ng expenses when the fund is replenished, no? So upon replenishment, of course, you'll debit the nature of the expense, no? So in this case, it's miscellaneous one siya. So you debit miscellaneous expense, then agency credit ka ng cash. Pero if it so happened that at the end of the reporting period, hindi na-replenish yung fund, of course, mag-adjust ka. So you'll debit expenses, credit ka petty cash fund. So as not to um, understate expenses, no? Credit petty cash fund. So, yun siya. If at the end of the reporting period, there were fund, no, na-incur using the entities or the agency's petty cash fund, you simply have to adjust, no, to record the adjustment to the petty cash fund. So, debit expenses, credit petty cash fund. So, at the end of the year, if there are some accruals, yun, for unpaid expenses, of course, di ba, mag-adjust ka. But in this case, yung adjustment lang natin is to recognize the cost of the goods sold, no? That were shipped that were used to fill the agency's orders. So you'll debit cost of goods sold, agency, credit merchandise shipments to agency. And then, yung office supplies natin, assuming that 150 lang yung nagamit, no? So, yung expense portion niya, so you'll debit office supplies expense agency, credit office supplies, AMBO agency, no? Next would be the closing entries. Then yung closing entries natin. Um, to close the entries ng agencies, of course, you'll create parang income summary account, no, ng agency. So, 'di ba, when we do closing entries, all expenses should be credited, na. So, you debit income AMBO agency, no. Ito yung parang income summary natin sa lahat ng transactions ni agency. And then credit mo lahat ng expenses, no. You have cost of goods sold 3.5, salaries expense 450, office expenses 150, and miscellaneous expenses 550. So yung total expenses natin is 4,650. So you debit income summary ni Ambo agency, then credit ka ng expenses. Then of course, um, to close the sales, no? Pag close natin sa sales, of course, sales account shall be debited, no, upon closing. So, you'll debit sales account, no, agency. Credit ka yung income summary mo ng transaction agency. So, credit income, AMBO agency. No, so we do have expenses of how much? Um, 4,650, expenses of 4,650, and then income of 5,000, no? So therefore, the balance is 350, no? Therefore, you do have a profit of 350, no? So, then to close the kasi temporary account lang naman din yung income summary account mo sa transactions mo kay agency. So, since it has a credit balance, no? Uh, you'll debit income ambo agency for 350 and credit income summary. So the net income of the agency is 350. Now let's have a sample problem no. So for agency. So normally questions ng sales agency is to compute for the agency's net income. No, so let's have our first example. So we have on December 1, 2019, the Jewett Company established an agency in Surigao, sending its merchandise samples costing 15,750 in a working fund of 9,000 to be maintained on an impressed basis. During the month of December, the agency transmitted to the Home Office sales orders, which were billed at 64,380, of which 20,400 was collected. A Home Office disbursement chargeable to the sales agency is the acquisition of furniture and fixtures for Surigao, 25,000 to be depreciated at 24% per annum. The agency paid expenses of 3,815 and received replenishment off from the Home Office. On December 31, 2019, the agency samples were valued at 10,075. It was estimated that the gross profit on goods shipped to bill agency sales orders were averaged 25% of cost. So the question is how much is the net income of the agency now for the month ended December 31, 2019. Okay, to compute for the net income, so you have sales less cost of sales equals gross profit, then gross profit um, less expenses now, your operating expenses to determine the net income. So let's start with the sales. So it was stated here that the sales will build at 64,380. Then it was also mentioned that the gross profit is 25% of cost. So therefore, to determine the cost of sales, simply yung sales mo na 64,380 divide by 125%. No, kasi based on 25% above cost kasi. Therefore, yung cost of sales mo is 51,504. Then, the gross profit is 12,876. Yung expenses natin, we have depreciation. So, you take note that the annual depreciation rate is 24%, and we're only determining the net income for just 1 month, 'di ba? Kasi for the month ended December 30, 2019, and then nag-start lang din naman siya December 1. So it's very important that um, determine mo yung if how many months yung net income na yung kinocompute mo. No? So, in this case, we have 1 month only. So, yung depreciation natin is for 1 month lang. And then, yung samples. Okay, so yung samples natin, we have 15,750. So, yung samples kasi, 'di ba? Uh, tinitreat siya as advertising expense. Meaning, to say, dapat a portion ng samples, no, ma-expense siya at the end of the reporting period. So, paano gina-expense yung samples? Either, gina-amortize siya based on its useful life, no? Or, at the end of the reporting period, gina-determine yung net realizable value ng sample. So in this case, we have, 'di ba, yung cost ng sample is 15,750 and then yung value niya at the end is only 10,075 na lang. Therefore, my expense kana 5,675. And you also incurred, the agency incurred, no, rather, the agency incurred 3,815 expenses, no, other expenses. So, yung total operating expenses ng agency is 9,990. So, the net income is 2,886. Okay, so let's have another example, no? October 2019, the Greenbelt main office established a sales agency in Ortigas. So, the main office sent samples of its merchandise amounting to 8,400 and a working fund amounting to 70,000 to be maintained on the impressed basis. So the samples sent were intended to last until June 1, 2020. So during the first 2 months of operation, the agency transmitted to the home office sale of goods costing 291,600, but the home office were not able to fill up 25% of the said transmitted sales order. So collections from customers amounted to 73,941 net of 2% sales discount. So payments made by the agency during October and November were as follows: annual rent of 57,600, advertising expense worth 5,600, and utilities amounting to 7,200. So it purchased equipment worth 9,000, which will be depreciated at 20% per annum. So the gross profit on sales agency order is 20% of sales. So uh, the question is to compute for the net income of the agency for the 2 months ended November 30, 2019. Okay, to compute for the net income. So, yung sales natin, since there are instances kasi no, na di lahat ng uh, sent orders, no, yung orders na sinend ng agency is i-fill ng home office. So in this case, 25% lang daw, the home office were not able to fill 25% of the set order. So yung 291,600 multiply mo ng 75% to get the orders filled by the home office. And then since it's at cost, kasi ito, costing siya, costing 297,600, hindi siya kasi yung previous example is build price yon. So in this case, it's at cost. So to determine the selling price, of course, you divide it by 80%. Why 80%? Kasi 20% yung um, gross profit based on sales. So, ano din pala no, you have to determine, you have, particular kayo uh, sa gross profit ratio if it's based on cost or based on sales. No? This is based on sales kasi. So, to get to 100%, i-divide mo yung cost ng by 80% to get the sales. No? Okay. Then, since, di ba, it was stated that the collection is net of 2% discount. So, may sales discount ka po. So, to determine the sales discount, since the 73,941 is already net of the 2% discount, so, 73,941 divide 98% times 2%. To determine the sales discount. So you have net sales of 271,876. So then, to get the cost of sales, no, you have 273,375,000 times 80%. Kasi 'di ba yung cost ratio natin is 80%. No? So, bakit di sa net sales tayo nagbase ng cost of sales? No? Hindi sa 271,866 but sa 273,375 pa din. So, kasi 'di ba, ang sales discount kasi walang physical flow of goods. So, if you determine the cost of sales, of course you ignore sales discount. But if it so happened that my sales return, no, so to determine the cost of sales, deduct mo yung sales return, but you don't include sales discount in determining cost of sales kasi nga walang physical flow of goods yung sales discount. So yung cost of sales natin would still base at 273,375. So you have gross profit of 53,166. That's net sales and the cost of sales. So yung expenses natin, we have rent, diba? So the agency paid annual rent. So since 2 months lang man yung uh, kinocompute natin net income, that's 57,600 divide 12 months kasi annual yung 57,600 times 2 for 2 months. And we have advertising of 5,600 and utilities expense of 7,200. Yung depreciation natin, we have 9,000, 20% per annum. Then since 2 months po, so you have 2 over 12. So you have 300 as your depreciation. And then yung samples, uh, 'di ba I've said kanina, yung samples normally para ma-expense is either gina-determine yung net realizable value at the end of the period or gina-amortize siya based sa estimated useful life. And it was mentioned that the samples uh, were intended to last until June 1, 2020. Therefore, the useful life of the samples from October 1, 2019 to June 1, 2020 is 8 months. 8 months. So, we have 8, 4 divide 8 to have the monthly amortization. Since we do have 2 months, no, you have 2,100. So the total expenses is 24,800, no? Then our net income, no, is 28,366, no? So that ends our accounting for sales agency, no? Next would video naman would be for the accounting for branch operations. So thank you.